Nirvana is a 7-letter word, and Nirvana is a concept.
Nirvana is a 3-piece underground alternative grunge rock band from Seattle, Washington, or the outskirts of Seattle, Washington, and that's about it. I mean, that's what we are.
If you've been anywhere near the internet in the past few years, you're most likely already aware of fast fashion and the never-ending trend cycle. Although the ethics of overconsumption have been prodded and picked apart, there's another aspect of the microtrend crisis, the commercialization of subcultures. The videos that perpetuate this are themselves not unusual, but it's an interesting combination. Clothes from websites popular for knockoffs and unethical labor practices compared to subcultures such as punk and grunge that have always expressed anti-capitalist and anti-conformist notions. But that said, the commodification of subcultures has long been prevalent in industrial and post-industrial societies. The rise of mass media in the 1920s led to new patterns of consumption, resulting in shifting dynamics between businesses and consumers that differed from previous decades. The media's heavy influence on society was apparent through the success of television and radio advertising, and with the introduction of credit, a consumerist mindset had taken hold over America. Corporations were now more easily able to appropriate components of subcultures, cultures in which the values and beliefs differ heavily from mainstream society. Once a subculture's popularity passes a certain threshold, companies become aware of aspects that have the potential for profit. Many of the practices and beliefs of these subcultures deviate from traditional societal norms. Some examples of subcultures include hippies, who rejected established institutions and sought to free themselves from societal restrictions, identified by long hair and bohemian or psychedelic clothing. Punk, which was popularized by bands such as the Sex Pistols, is more than just a music genre. The movement is anti-authoritarian, anti-capitalist, and anti-establishment. The clothing is often marked by dark colors, leather jackets, and crust pants. I also wanted to point out that these are different from subcultures such as goth, which are primarily music-based, although they also include some aesthetic and cultural elements. However, goth does not have the set value system that punk and hippies do. The problem is subversion is cool. Subversion has always been cool. In the 1996 cultural critique, The Conquest of Cool, Thomas Frank states that commercial fantasies of rebellion, liberation, and outright revolution against the stultifying demands of mass society are commonplace almost to the point of invisibility in advertising, movie, and television programming. As facets of subcultures become readily marketable and are prevalent in the mainstream, these notions of resistance are eroded into something milder, as the original messages become palatable for a general audience. A well-known example of this phenomena was the 1990s breakthrough of grunge. Due to the rapid success of bands such as Nirvana, media focus shifted to alternative scenes such as grunge, a subculture that emerged from Seattle in the late 1980s. The distortion-filled sludge rock genre that took influence from punk rock and heavy metal differed in its element of authenticity. The I don't care attitude of its movement was a rebellion in and of itself, diverging from the elaborate theatrics and masculinity of its predecessors. Over-the-top costumes were replaced with worn-out jeans and thrifted band tees, the consumerism and showy glamour of 80s rock entirely discarded. While 80s glam rock was decadent and self-glorifying, grunge was raw, emotional. The subculture's apathetic view also materialized in a rejection of gender norms through the deep male vulnerability in the song lyrics, the lack of sexual themes, and the disregarding of gendered clothing. In her essay, Body Piercing, Gender Nihilism in the 90s, Karen Aubrey states that in grunge, standards of conventional sexual attractiveness, which encourage emphasis of gender-designated body parts, are thereby not just ignored, but defied. Nirvana was also unabashedly feminist and anti-homophobia. Songs such as Polly and Ben a Son have explicitly feminist themes, and Cobain was close friends with Toby Hale and Kathleen Hanna, members of the punk feminist Riotgrrrl movement. Nirvana stated in the liner notes of the album Incesticide, "If any of you in any way hate homosexuals, people of a different color, or women, please do this one favor for us. Leave us the fuck alone. Don't come to our shows and don't buy our records." Other grunge music groups expressed similar ideas. Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam wrote pro-choice on his arm during an MTV Unplugged set, and Pearl Jam songs such as Why Go Daughter and Better Man also reflect the problems women face in society. These subversive aspects are culturally important. Grunge is not only a music genre, but also a culture in and of itself. The rejection of traditional norms and values were more than just their clothing style. It was a lifestyle, a way of being, one that was anti-conformist and anti-capitalist. But by 1992, the movement had shifted. Nirvana's virtually overnight success had come with invisible strings attached. After Nevermind reached #1 on the Billboard charts, everyone wanted a taste of grunge, including corporations. Kurt Cobain of Nirvana and Eddie Vedder of Pearl Jam graced the covers of major magazines. Marc Jacobs released a grunge collection composed of expensive dresses and artfully draped silk flannels, and Vogue did a Grunge and Glory spread. In a 2004 commentary, journalist Eric Olson states that the popularity of Nirvana's Nevermind established the cultural and commercial viability of alternative rock in general. The market quickly took control over what had claimed to rebel against it, and grunge had become the manufactured image that was the antithesis of everything it stood for. The image was cool and the image sells, but the true beliefs that make it so subversive are not. It was not in the brand's best interest to genuinely promote the feminism, anti-homophobia, and anti-capitalism of grunge because it wasn't profitable then. So they took the aesthetics and stripped away everything else. Other alternative groups faced similar problems. In 1992, magazines such as 17 and Newsweek featured Riotgrrrls, an underground feminist music genre that found itself pushed into the spotlight after the popularization of grunge.
To the front. I'm not kidding. All boys, be cool for once in your lives. Go back. Back. Back.
Initially, many members of the Riotgrrrl movement were open to the attention, believing it would allow them to express feminized ideas to other girls. However, they later felt as if they had been misinterpreted. Their messages morphed into a fad and trend. Corin Tucker, guitarist and vocalist of Riotgrrrl band Sleater Kinney, stated,
It was deliberate that we were made to look like we were just ridiculous girls parading around in our underwear. They refused to, do serious interviews with us. They misprinted what we had to say. They took our articles and our fanzines and our essays out of context. We wrote a lot about sexual abuse and sexual assault for teenagers and young women. I think those are really important concepts that the media never addressed.
The feminism was the most important part of the movement. Alison Wolfe and Molly Newman originally created Bratmobile as a fake band that was more for promoting feminism than actually performing music. The message was in itself greater than the music a product of the deeply ingrained politics. But again, that wasn't as profitable. Members of the movement believed that their radical political messages had been co-opted by girl power music groups, substituting meaningful messages for consumeristic feminism that moved efforts away from the liberation of women.
There were a lot of very important ideas that I think the mainstream media couldn't handle. And so it was easier for them to focus on the fact that these were girls who were wearing barrettes in their hair or writing slut on their stomach.
Early 2000 pop music utilized messages of sexual freedom and confidence without the radical politics behind it, creating a polished and commercialized image devoid of Riotgrrrl's critiques of patriarchy, capitalism, and sexual violence. Although the messages were purposefully misinterpreted, it didn't stop brands from selling the idea of grunge. The thrifted hand-me-down fashion style prevalent among members of the movement became $35 flannels from JCPenney. The watering down of anti-conformist notions into easily digestible pills demolished the foundations of grunge, leaving behind a way of dressing and a loosely defined music genre. Corporations co-opt and sell their apolitical, idealized package of grunge, the message discarded for whatever can produce the highest profit. Kurt Cobain is dehumanized into a symbol, becoming a martyr for a movement that had been mutilated into an unrecognizable caricature. Even modern-day revivals on Tumblr and more recently TikTok continue to be apolitical. Massive clothing hauls establish grunge as a fashion-based microtrend that contributes to overconsumption and clothing waste. The depoliticization of counterculture movements of art and music reduces the value of disruptive messages into vessels for profit. Just as consumerism turned Riotgrrrl's female liberation movement to catchy slogans while ignoring real systemic issues, the reduction of anti-establishment movements to their aesthetic value ignores discussions of important topics in favor of enforcing the status quo.